Eric Thomas Alvarado was born on June 6, 1986. In 2018, 32-year-old Eric was living in Atlanta, Texas, and working as a tattoo artist, but had plans to open his own shop. He was married to Samantha and was a father to her 3 children. He was described as having a big heart, who was an all-around nice guy. On November 20th, 2018, Eric left his home around 1:30 a.m. in his pajamas with his 2 dogs to allegedly go to the store. After leaving, he was never heard from again. Samantha then strangely called the police 45 minutes later to report him missing. Even the cops were baffled at why she would call after only 45 minutes. Did she recognize that he was having some sort of mental episode, or was it something even more sinister? Even his brother Matt and Eric's father had noticed him acting strange and paranoid leading up to his disappearance. Allegedly, there were multiple people at the house that night who all said he was acting paranoid. Eric didn't take his phone with him, but it was out of minutes. Investigators were able to retrieve the home's security footage and confirmed he really did leave the home with his 2 dogs. Samantha said that after he left, she found the front door wide open and found it strange he took the dogs. There's a lot of suspicions surrounding Samantha, but I will say if my husband began acting strange and paranoid and then left in the middle of the night in his pajamas, I would probably quickly call the police as well. Here's a video of Samantha talking about his disappearance. You can let me know what your thoughts are in the comments.
The front door was wide open, the screen door was wide open. The dogs were gone, he was gone, the Jeep was gone.
After trying to report him missing, she and his friends began searching for him. Later that evening, Arkansas State Police found his black Jeep abandoned and out of gas on Highway 71, south of Ogden, Arkansas. His brother, Matt, along with multiple cousins, had come in from Indianapolis to help search for Eric. When he arrived on the morning of November 21st, the first thing he did was ask Samantha for his phone, but she said it reset after she tried too many times to get in. Texas Rangers then collected the phone and had it recovered, but it's unknown what, if anything, was found. On November 24th, 2018, his family got together to search the area where his Jeep was found and discovered his 2 pit bulls deceased. It appeared they had been shot and run over. His shoe was then found with a toe tag inside. The toe tag was from November 20th, when Eric's Jeep was originally discovered and tagged by the police. Family, along with Arkansas police, continued to search for a couple of more hours, but nothing else was found. Arkansas police then told the family to contact Atlanta, Texas law enforcement and report that Eric's disappearance involved foul play. At that point, the Atlanta police came and searched the area and discovered Eric's keys hanging from a gate about a mile from where the Jeep and dogs were found. Unfortunately, they were still unable to find Eric. Then, journalist Kathy Crisp and Eric's friend Melissa Vaughn got involved in the case and began contacting everyone close to Eric. As they continued looking into his disappearance, they noticed strange things began occurring, such as late-night phone calls. When Melissa answered, the person would breathe heavily and then hang up. Was someone worried they were getting close to finding out what happened? The investigator who initially took on the case was Eric's neighbor, which some found to be a conflict of interest. Sadly, as of 2024, Eric has never been found, and this case remains unsolved. Delisa Kelley was born to Lysandra Kelley on July 24, 1989. In 2014, 24-year-old Delisa had a young son and was 2 months pregnant. On March 7, 2014, at 4:30 p.m., Delisa left her grandmother's home to go to her best friend's wake, who had died in a car accident. A couple of hours later, at 6:13 p.m., she was seen on surveillance footage arriving at a local Stop and Save convenience store in a blue 1989 Grand Marquis. After making a purchase, she leaves in the same vehicle. 30 minutes later, her sister Jasmine got the worst call of her life. It was Delisa, and she had pocket dialed her sister. When Jasmine answered, she heard her sister screaming, "Stop, stop, get off me." A man can then be heard yelling back at her, "Shut up, stop screaming, you want to be hard-headed." The phone call lasted a total of 1 minute and 11 seconds. After that, Delisa was never heard from again, and she never arrived at her friend's wake. Jasmine tried to call her back, but there was no answer. At 7 p.m., she received a text from Delisa saying she would call her soon, but never did. It's likely it wasn't even Delisa who was texting, because when Jasmine asked if someone was hitting her, a reply came through that the man thought she was someone else. Jasmine had called her grandmother and informed her of the situation, who in turn called 911. The operator passed the information to Sergeant Kevin Mansell with the Dallas police, but he didn't take the call seriously. He was heard on the 911 call laughing and suggesting that because she is pregnant, she probably leaves the house all the time. He then called the phone company requesting a ping of Delisa's phone, but unfortunately, they were unable to get her location. Sadly, a week later, on March 14, 2014, a police officer found Delisa's body on the front porch of an abandoned home in Dallas, about 6 minutes from where she was last seen. In 2017, Sergeant Mansell was indicted by a grand jury along with 2 other officers for misconduct following the death of Tony Tempa on August 10, 2016. Tony was under the influence of drugs and suffered from schizophrenia and depression. Instead of trying to help him, Mansell once again took the opportunity to joke about an unconscious Tony. He would later die at the hospital. In 2019, the charges against all 3 officers were dismissed, and as of 2021, he remains an officer with the Dallas police. After her disappearance, her family advocated for a new alert system for people from 18 to 64 called the Kelley Alert System. In 2019, the bill was passed and signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott. Sadly, as of 2024, her killer has never been arrested, and this case remains unsolved. Jason David Landry was born on July 29, 1999. In 2020, 21-year-old Jason was living in an apartment in San Marcos, Texas, and was a student at Texas State University. After finishing his finals that fall, he made plans to travel back to his hometown of Missouri City, Texas, but never told his parents. Instead, he made plans to meet up with a friend. On December 13, 2020, before he left for his trip, he spent an hour on a video call with his friend that he planned to meet up with. Unfortunately, Jason had allegedly been smoking marijuana and didn't sound like himself during the call. So much so that his friend decided to record him, thinking he would never remember their conversation. In the video, he can be seen rolling blunts and placing them inside a CVS container. Once the call was over, Jason got in his car and started his drive. A couple of hours later, a volunteer firefighter driving on Salt Flat Road in Luling, Texas, about 30 minutes from San Marcos, found Jason's 2003 Nissan Altima wrecked and abandoned with the lights on and the key in the ignition, and reported it to dispatch. It was ultimately determined that Jason had crashed his car after overcorrecting on the gravel road, causing him to spin out. The car finally stopped after hitting a tree and a barbed wire fence. Strangely, Jason was nowhere to be found. About 900 feet away from the car were all of Jason's clothes that investigators believe he was wearing at the time of the accident. Besides a small amount of blood in his underwear, there was nothing to indicate that he suffered any serious injuries. The blood was probably the result of him getting caught on the barbed wire fence after getting out, because no blood was found inside the car. Also found were his backpack, toiletry items, and a tumbler with his pet betta fish in it. When the state trooper arrived, he confiscated the drugs from Jason's backpack and had the car towed, but left behind all Jason's belongings. Investigators believe Jason walked away from the crash to get help, and something happened afterward. But the question still remains, why did he take off all his clothes? This is typical in people suffering hypothermia and is called paradoxical undressing, but the low that night was only 57 degrees. Dogs tracked his scent for a quarter of a mile from the crash site and then lost the trail. When Jason's father, Kent, who's an attorney, arrived at the scene, he was upset that the officer had not taken all Jason's belongings for evidence. So he began recording the scene before collecting his son's stuff. Kent believes his son might have met with foul play that night. A twist in the case came from Jason's search history. For some reason, he had been Googling, how long can you live in the woods without food, and how long can you go in the wilderness? He was also searching spiritual enlightenment practices and different strains of marijuana to achieve that. Investigators have considered multiple theories, such as he might have died out there and feral hogs or river otters consumed his remains, or that he climbed inside an oil tank. However, those theories have never been confirmed. If foul play was involved, did someone pick Jason up and murder him? Until he is found, those are questions we may never find the answers to. Unfortunately, as of 2024, Jason is still missing, and this case remains unsolved. Michael Howard Havekost was born on August 15, 1968, and went by Mikey. In 2020, 52-year-old Mikey was living in Kelley, Texas, and suffered from cognitive and intellectual disabilities. This unfortunately led him to be overly trusting of people. Mikey loved the Green Bay Packers and was a huge fan of holidays, especially Christmas. In March of 2020, he lost his dishwashing job at Old Chicago Pizza after the place closed due to the coronavirus pandemic. After being laid off, he lost his apartment at Hunter's Glen. He and his then-girlfriend, Becky, then became homeless. He eventually ended up at a homeless camp in Harker Heights for a couple of weeks before turning to his sister Sarah for help. Becky, on the other hand, moved back in with her parents, who were sick and needed her help. Sarah agreed to help him and began paying for him to stay at the Day and Night Inn because her home was too small. On September 4th, 2020, Sarah went by and saw her brother at the hotel, and everything seemed fine. However, when she returned 3 days later to pay for another week's stay, she knocked on his door, but he didn't answer. She assumed he was sleeping or in the shower and left. She returned a week later, and that's when she realized the hotel staff had not seen him all week. She was then let inside his room and found all his belongings inside, including his wallet, shoes, glasses, and hearing aids. His pants were still on the chair by the bed, which looked to Sarah like he had taken them off to get ready for bed. At that point, she reported him missing. Kelley police began searching the area with drones, but no sign of Mikey was found. They also put up flyers and posted them on their social media accounts. The detective on the case said he reached out to every hospital and mental health facility in Central Texas, but no one had seen Mikey. While his girlfriend, Becky, is not considered a suspect, the investigators did discover that Mikey had mentioned during a psychological evaluation that he felt she had taken advantage of him financially. Becky called Sarah after the disappearance and tried to point her towards some people to talk to, but never provided any definitive details. The detective tried to locate her to do an interview, but she had strangely made herself unavailable. Investigators now believe that his trusting nature landed him in with the wrong crowd, and they took advantage of him. Is Becky dodging the detective because she knows who they are and is afraid to come forward, or did she play a part in his disappearance? Unfortunately, as of 2024, Mikey is still missing, and this case remains unsolved. Nicole Coleman was born the middle child to Mike and Dawn on March 3, 1995, and was described as a bright, warm, and loving person. She loved to write, especially poetry, and was said to be very good at it. Unfortunately, when she was 14 years old, she began to have mental health issues, which resulted in a complete downward spiral. After high school, her mental health improved quite a bit, and she decided to enroll at Lone Star College. Nicole was very smart and earned her associate's degree in art with a 4.0 GPA. Due to her own struggles with mental illness, she dreamed of becoming a therapist so she could help others who struggled like she did. She then made plans to continue her education and was accepted to Sam Houston and the University of Houston. Unfortunately, around this time, she began using drugs as a way to self-medicate, and all her life goals were put on halt. The drugs unfortunately caused her to disappear for days at a time. Her father became so worried about her that he began having her write down the name and number of the person she was going to see on a paper towel. He eventually had about 30 to 40 paper towels in his possession with people's information on them. In the fall of 2018, 23-year-old Nicole had moved from Houston to Austin. A couple of months after the move, she checked herself into a mental health facility. After being released in December, she remained in Austin and moved into a group home for women. On Friday, December 28, 2018, at 5:26 p.m., surveillance footage at a gas station captured Nicole walking across the parking lot. She was then seen again at 6:07 p.m. at the same gas station, but this time she went inside. Unfortunately, that was the last time anyone ever saw her alive. 3 days later, on December 31, 2018, cyclists on Ed Bluestein Boulevard, not far from the gas station, found her body in a wooded area about 50 yards off the road. She was found nude and had apparently suffered severe trauma, but the exact details of her death have not been released to the public. Investigators looked into the possibility that her murder was connected to the attack and sexual assault of a woman in Davis White Park a week earlier that resulted in the arrest of 2 men. However, they were not able to make a connection. Sadly, as of 2024, her killer or killers have not been found, and this case remains unsolved.